The Somnath Temple. Wow. It's an absolute lightning rod for some of the most incredible stories you'll ever hear. Some of them are true, some were, well, deliberately made up, and some seem to defy the actual laws of physics. So let's try to unravel the fact from the fiction, and we're going to start with a lie that echoed for centuries.
Okay, so picture this. The year is 1842. The British East India Company is just reeling from a totally disastrous campaign in Afghanistan, and they desperately need a PR win. So the Governor-General, Lord Ellenborough, makes this huge, grand proclamation. He declares that his army has righted an 800-year-old wrong. They've brought back the original sandalwood gates of the Somnath Temple, supposedly looted centuries ago. It was meant to be this massive moment of restored honor. But yeah, there was just one tiny problem. The entire story was a fake, a total fabrication. The triumphant claim from 1842 just completely fell apart under the slightest bit of scrutiny. Turns out, the gates weren't from Somnath at all. They were from the conqueror's own tomb. They weren't made of Indian sandalwood. They were just local Afghan wood. This wasn't some ancient insult being avenged. It was just pure political theater.
The deception was pretty thorough, but honestly, it was debunked just as easily. Experts took one look and said, nope, the woodwork is completely wrong for ancient Gujarat. And the final nail in the coffin? Get this. There was an Arabic inscription right there on the gates, mentioning the guy who supposedly stole them. These gates, which you can still see in Agra Fort, are just a stark reminder of some pretty bold colonial propaganda.
So that brings us to the really crucial question, right? Why? Why go to all this trouble? Why invent this massive, elaborate story about a set of wooden gates? Well, the answer lies in the immense symbolic power of the Somnath Temple itself, a power that was built over 1,000 years of faith, destruction, and just unbelievable resilience.
The temple is often called the Shrine Eternal, and for a very, very good reason. Its story isn't just about a single building, it's about a cycle of existence that has pretty much mirrored the history of India itself. I mean, just look at this timeline. It reveals this relentless cycle. After that famous destruction in 1026, it was raised again, and then again. But here's the thing, the pattern wasn't just destruction, it was rebirth. Every single time it was torn down, the faith was so strong that it was rebuilt, culminating in that 1951 reconstruction, which was this incredibly powerful symbol for a newly independent India.
And this contrast, it just says it all. On one side, you see the ruins from 1869, a shadow of its former self, and on the other, the magnificent structure that stands today. This isn't just about architecture, it's about an unbreakable spirit. And that spirit is woven into the very legends of the temple, including one that seems to break the laws of science.
All right, so we've moved from documented history to a mystery that sounds like it's straight out of a sci-fi movie. The legend of a levitating idol that was the absolute centerpiece of the ancient temple.
Now listen, this isn't just some local folklore. This account comes from Al-Qazvini, a Persian geographer who actually documented the invasion. He describes, with what sounds like genuine awe, an idol just suspended in midair. He even says the soldiers tested it, passing a spear all around it and finding nothing. Even the people who came to destroy it were completely baffled by what they were seeing.
So, the theory goes that the idol itself, the Shiva Linga, wasn't made of ordinary stone. It was supposedly a fragment of an iron-nickel meteorite. Ancient texts describe the original sacred object appearing as a fiery column of light, which, sounds a lot like a meteorite fall. And critically, iron-nickel meteorites, they are very, very magnetic.
But here's the scientific problem. According to a law of physics called Earnshaw's theorem, you can't just hover one magnet with another. The forces are just inherently unstable. The floating object will always flip over or just snap to one of the magnets. With simple static magnetism, it just shouldn't be possible. So, how did they do it? This is where the sheer genius of ancient Indian science might have come into play. The proposed solution is this beautiful three-part system. First, you've got your magnetic idol. Second, a massive magnet in the temple roof provides the upward lift. And third, and this is the secret sauce, plates of a special metal called bismuth in the walls and floor, which provided stability. Okay, so here's how it could have worked. You have a powerful magnet in the roof, pulling the idol up, fighting gravity. But to solve that stability problem, the bismuth plates in the walls would actively repel the idol's magnetic field. So the second it started to drift to one side, the wall would just gently push it back to the center. It creates this perfect stable pocket, basically a loophole in Earnshaw's theorem.
And a crucial clue might come from that historian Al-Qazvini's own account. He mentioned that the temple's teak pillars were covered with lead. Now, why lead? It doesn't make much sense. But bismuth is a heavy metal that looks a lot like lead and was often confused for it in ancient times. And here's the kicker. Bismuth is almost 10 times more diamagnetic than lead, making it the absolute perfect material for this incredible feat of engineering.
As if a levitating idol wasn't mind-bending enough, the Somnath Temple holds another really profound mystery, one that suggests an astonishingly advanced understanding of world geography.
So on the temple grounds, there's a pillar known as the Bahan Stump, or the Arrow Pillar. It's believed to date back to at least the 6th century. And the Sanskrit inscription on it makes this very specific, very bold claim, that from this exact point on the coast, there is an unobstructed sea route all the way to the South Pole.
And here's the unbelievable part. It's true. It's absolutely geographically correct. If you were to follow a direct line of longitude south from Somnath, you would not encounter any major landmass until you hit Antarctica, almost 10,000 kilometers away, which raises a staggering question. Without satellites or modern maps, how in the world could they possibly have known this? It remains an incredible puzzle.
So, we've explored colonial lies, national history, and what feels like science fiction. But what happens when we actually dig into the ground? Let's see what archaeology tells us about the real people who lived here long, long ago.
Now, surprisingly, the most ancient finds weren't actually at the site of the famous temple, right there on the coast. As this map shows, they were discovered a few kilometers inland, revealing a much, much older story.
And what they found wasn't some grand temple, but the intimate little details of daily life. Things like pottery, children's toy cartwheels, shell bangles, and glass beads. They even found the remains of a wall and an ancient hearth. This wasn't a place of gods and kings. This was a home for ordinary people.
And radiocarbon dating of a charcoal sample gave a really definitive answer. The settlement was around 2,000 years old, placing it in the early historic period. So that means a thriving community existed right here, a full millennium before the famous temple that was raided was even built.
So how do we put all of these different pieces together? You've got the colonial lie, the cycles of destruction and rebirth, the seemingly impossible science, and the quiet, real archaeological history.
I think the key takeaway here is that Somnath doesn't have one single simple identity. It's a place where all of these different narratives just overlap and converge. It's a political tool for a British governor. It's a potent symbol of Indian resilience. It's a possible testament to lost scientific knowledge. And maybe most importantly, it's a sacred ground where people have lived and worked and worshipped for millennia.
And all this leaves us with a final thought. History is never just about what happened. It's also about the stories we choose to tell about what happened. And the story of Somnath shows us that these layers of myth, of fact, and of fabrication are what truly make a place eternal.